Hello, in this video I want to talk about why you crave the abuser so much and why people return to these relationships so many times. It's a bit like picking at a scab of a wound that hasn't quite healed. It's painful when you do it, but it's itching so much. The problem is, when you do pick at it and it's not healed, it could leave a scar. On average, people return to abusive relationships up to 8 times. It's a bit like an addiction. What people don't realise is that it is actually an addiction. Hello, my name's Elizabeth Goddard from the Divorce Sanctuary, and on this channel I talk about healing from emotional abuse and divorcing both emotionally and physically from the abuser. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you're returning back, thank you and welcome, and thank you so much to all my new subscribers over the last few weeks. It's just been absolutely amazing. As I said, on average, people return to abusive relationships up to 8 times. It is like an addiction. Now, you might be in the throes of confusion, either at the end of or nearly at the end of an emotionally abusive or toxic relationship. Or perhaps this happened to you years ago and you still haven't recovered from it, and you're dragging this emotional trauma from relationship to relationship, wondering why it's so hard to heal. The damage caused puts you in a state of confusion. You had no idea that the abuse was taking place. It's like Chinese water torture. It happens very, very slowly and it turns you insane. One question I ask is, what if this happened for a reason? There was something magical about you, something pure. It might have been your energy, your creativity, your laughter, all of them. There's something very unique about you that was needed by your abuser, and you were picked and groomed. Everything you said and did was watched and noted. The interest in you was not exactly what you thought it was. You were swept off your feet with compliments, gifts, days out, meals out. Your every need was catered for. You may have woken in the morning to find a message from them, and this was deliberate, ensuring that they were the first thing you thought about, and perhaps they did the same thing at the end of the day. I, like many people, have been hurt by a toxic or an emotionally abusive person. But in my case, it wasn't just one. I've managed to notch up a few. There's a wounding to the soul that you don't believe you'll ever recover from. The definition of a label is a small piece of paper, fabric, plastic, or a similar material attached to an object, giving information about it, or a classifying phrase or name applied to a person or a thing. If you find it helpful to use the label, if it helps you identify with something, especially if it's beneficial to your healing, then please do use one. When I started this part of my healing journey, I couldn't identify as codependent. It just didn't sit well with me. It was like wearing an itchy jumper. I did listen to Ross Rosenberg's book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, and he spoke about the dance between the narcissist and the codependent, and it made me squirm. However, I was able to identify with the label empath at that time, and I used it until I was able to start healing my codependent. There is a reason these relationships are so comfortable and why they feel so familiar. That intense connection and the powerful attraction. You might find it helpful to use a label, you might not. It might be helpful for you to understand the emotions and the trauma you are experiencing. It might not. This is your journey, and only you will know what feels right, or what feels right for you at this time. Start to listen to your body and to understand what it needs. So the labels, the narcissist, the sociopath and the psychopath, I try not to use them. Firstly, these personality types can't take responsibility for the untold damage that they cause. In fact, they walk away playing the victim. And secondly, the diagnosis for a personality disorder is given by a mental health professional, and because they don't see anything wrong with their behaviour, they are not going to seek help. Perhaps you're trying to understand what happened and wondering why you're feeling the way you are. Maybe you are discovering all this new information and you're asking yourself if you're the narcissist, and this is really common. The fact that you're asking that question should hopefully put your mind at rest. They can't take responsibility, so it isn't something the abuser would ask. And we're all on the scale. In fact, we're all on every scale. So as a baby, you were naturally self-centered and you needed to be that for your survival. You alerted your parents or your caregivers to tend to your needs by crying. And over time, this changed. So as you grew up, you were shown how to manage your feelings and your needs. If you have spent any significant amount of time with a narcissist or an emotional abuser, you may have picked up a few traits. You may have been asking yourself, who does that to another person? Or why does it hurt so much? Do I have empathy? Or am I a narcissist? These are not questions somebody with a personality disorder would ever consider. You could be wondering if you are a narcissist because you've been told this is all your fault. So during the devaluation and discard stages, they've told you what is wrong with you and why the relationship is breaking down. And you did whatever you could to fix it, losing more and more of yourself. Or it could be that you grew up with one or more narcissistic people or emotionally abusive people, toxic people in your life, and you have picked up some of their traits. It does not make you a narcissist. We are all on the spectrum. And believe me when I say I understand what you've experienced is horrific. Each story is different, but the pattern is the same. Idealization, devaluation, discard. And this cycle can go on for years. The longer it goes on, the more enmeshed you become, the invisible chains trapping you. But what if there was a way of turning this grit into gold? You might have a few childhood wounds, and I believe these are the reasons that you might have experienced this relationship. I lost track of how many 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds that I needed to heal. Much like a verruca, which is a virus that penetrates all levels of the skin, the full root isn't removed, it lays dormant until it is triggered again. And this is the same for the original wound. If you do not fully heal this wound, it will appear again, and you will keep meeting people who treat you in the same way. It causes so much damage. Long-term contact with a toxic or emotionally abusive person causes damage to your brain. It causes damage to the hippocampus, which is a structure in the brain that is the shape of a little seahorse. They're found on either side, around where the ears are situated. This is the area we use for learning and memory. Damage to the hippocampus can result in memory loss. And the stress caused by an emotionally abusive relationship triggers hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline, which causes the hippocampus to shrink. This can happen when a child or adult is under constant threat from intimidating or bullying behaviour. This could be fear of abandonment or the destruction of a favourite object. The damage to the hippocampus can happen when a child or an adult experiences criticism, belittling, name-calling, yelling, swearing, or verbal humiliation. It can occur when children and adults are isolated from friends and family, not allowing them to have friends or preventing them from attending groups or classes outside the home. Research from Yale and Stanford University used veterans and victims of childhood abuse who were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. They used MRI scans to show the reduction in the hippocampus. These studies showed that traumatic or highly stressful experiences can have long-term effects on the structure and the function of the brain. When we experience stress, our body receives the hormone cortisol, causing the fight and flight response. And according to New York University, high levels of cortisol may damage the cells in the hippocampus. We are all a bunch of chemicals held together in our skin. And if you think back to school and your science lessons, when chemicals were mixed together, there was a reaction. We are exactly the same. You may have experienced this when you met someone for the first time. It caused a reaction within you. There might have been an instant attraction or an instant dislike. These chemicals are reactions within your body. When you experience trauma, your stress hormones are triggered. There is a chemical reaction. When you are in or recovering from an emotionally abusive or toxic relationship, the way you are feeling could be due to the chemicals raging around your body. Think of a teenager who can't communicate and their emotions are everywhere. You are not quite sure when they open their mouths who you're going to get. Does that sound familiar? When I started my journey, a lot of people were talking about the addiction to dopamine, but my interest was in the role of oxytocin, what that plays in relationships. It is the bonding hormone that helps us create trust. And Dr. Helen Fisher, and I'll put the links to the articles below, her team at, I think it's Rutgers University, discovered that romantic love can be broken down into 3 categories, and that's lust, attraction, and attachment. With lust, the hormones are testosterone and estrogen. Attraction are dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And with attachment, it's oxytocin and vasopressin. The hypothalamus plays a role in this, stimulating the production of sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, and men and women have both. So we can lust after someone we are attracted to, and a person can lust after another without it being reciprocated. Attraction involves the pathways of the brain that control the reward behaviour. So dopamine, which is produced by the hypothalamus, is released when we do things that make us feel good. Dopamine and norepinephrine are released when we are attracted to someone and can make us feel giddy with excitement, or we might feel more energetic, and it can lead to decreased appetite and insomnia. Norepinephrine, also known as noradrenaline, plays a large role in the fight or flight response. The attraction seems to lead to reduction in serotonin, or hormone that's known to be involved in the appetite and mood. Whereas the attachment is the dormant factor in long-term relationships, and this is why my interest was so high in this chemical. Lust and attraction are mainly found in romantic entanglements. The attachment is a need to bond. It's needed for the parent-infant bonding or any relationship where trust is needed. Whereas dopamine is the hormone responsible for the brain's reward centre. And a lot of research has been carried out on dopamine pathways and addictions. The same regions light up when we are attracted to someone that also light up when a person takes cocaine. And cocaine maintains the dopamine signalling much longer. And the same brain regions light up when we become addicted to material goods as well, and when we become emotionally dependent on our partners. You might hear people describe the emotions at the end of a relationship or emotionally abusive relationship like an addict going through withdrawal. Too much dopamine in a relationship can underlie the unhealthy emotional dependence on a partner. And it's the same with oxytocin. They say too much of something is bad for you. And actually in this case it is really true, because studies on drugs such as MDMA and GHB show that oxytocin may be the hormone behind the feel-good sociable effects that these chemicals produce, causing the user to disassociate with their environment and act out of character and even recklessly. Oxytocin works as a bonding hormone, reinforcing the positive feelings we feel towards people that we love, and reminding us why we like these people and increasing our affection towards them. But what you need to remember is this was a manufactured relationship, so the bonding that took place was different from a normal, healthy relationship. And because of this, it moved too quickly through the stages of lust and attraction. So you might have seen the red flags, but you were giddy with the chemical rushes. Research has discovered that oxytocin is in fact two-faced and responsible for strengthening a stressful situation, experiencing triggers of fear and anxiety. Fight and flight are stress responses. When faced with a dangerous situation, we make an instant decision. We can either stay and fight or run, so we take flight. Our brains are able to make a split decision by scanning the area and deciding if we can get away safely or if we need to stay and fight, and adrenaline is released into the body. Fawning is a response that's used when a person perceives a threat. So instead of running away or fighting, they respond in a pleasing way. This technique is used to try and calm down a situation, to stall the threat of the attacker. Talking your way out of a situation or displaying exaggerated flattery or affection towards the abuser. And freeze is a response triggered when a person can't win. They can't fight, they can't take flight, and they can't calm down the situation. In his book, Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, Pete Walker talks about freeze and how it stems from emotional abuse in childhood. Stress can be helpful, it helps keep us focused and alert, but when experienced over a long period of time, it's very harmful. As children, we were sponges. Between the ages of, between our birth and round about 7 or 8 years old, we lived in a theta state. And this is a hypnotic state. So everything that we saw and we heard, we believed to be true. It isn't until we started to get older and started to visit other people's homes and mix with other groups that we realised that other people do things differently. The words children hear and what they witness become ingrained into their subconscious mind. The messages they receive tell them what is acceptable behaviour and what isn't. As children, we take on the beliefs of the adults in our lives. It might be that you came from a long line of doctors or lawyers and the expectation was that you would follow them. I lost track of the amount of people that I've met over the years that went into a career just to please a parent. And if you have young children and you believe you are in an abusive relationship, what are you teaching them? When I wrote my book, The A to Z of Emotional Abuse, I did it to describe some of the words that you hear as you enter into this new place of learning and healing. It describes the techniques that were used to manipulate you. And if you're experiencing really powerful traumatic reactions to anything, please seek medical help. The abuser got you addicted to them. They were your drug of choice. And like with any substance that is toxic to you, at some point you say enough is enough. And at that point you might find it easy to walk away, or you might struggle with withdrawal symptoms. Many describe it like being weaned off heroin. I've no idea what that feels like, but I know the pain of breaking the trauma bonds and that addiction. If you haven't divorced emotionally, you might still be trying to make sense of the feeling of overwhelm, trying to balance your emotions. And there might be part of you that would be really willing to have them back. Trauma bonding is horrific and it keeps you trapped. These people are the masters of manipulation. You believe what they were telling you. They reminded you constantly how amazing you were. They told you how you were meant to be together. And they told you that no one else had ever understood them in the way that you did. And then they devalued you and then discarded you. And they did it time and time again. They will always play the victim. They carefully play a game and trigger your responses within you. If you can't go no contact, then please watch my video on responding and not reacting. That in the link below. A lot of people coming out of this type of relationship experience complex post-traumatic stress disorder, adrenal fatigue, hairline trigger responses. They might experience nightmares, flashbacks, and these emotions are horrific. And only someone who has gone through it themselves will understand why a person would go back. It feels safer in the relationship than it does out of the relationship. I know it sounds mad to anyone who hasn't experienced it, but it really does. You have been told you can't survive without them. In fact, all of your life, this fear has been created. It's been passed down actually through millennia. Rejection from the tribe you've been told is dangerous. Your handsome prince rode off with another person who quite conveniently stepped into your glass slippers. And you've been left broke and broken, picking up the pieces. And you might start to see a little flash here and there of who they really are. But as quickly as that comes through, your thoughts and emotions can spiral out of control. and you're back to justifying their behavior, believing they were right, and starting to wonder again if you had said something or done something differently, you would still be in this place. As I said, abusers are masters of manipulation. They use words to deceive, coerce, seduce, mislead, and to gain power and control. I'm going to share with you a few things that might help you to get through this period where they might come back and hoover you, or they might come to just get some validation from you. One is taking control of your emotions. Breathing through this, grounding exercises. Going no contact is another technique where you, or if you can't do that because you share custody or you've got things in common that you need to be in contact with them, grey rock is another technique, a way of dealing with that. Not validating them in any way. When they make contact with you, if you're going through divorce or it's about children, don't respond straight away. They're expecting you to be sitting by your phone. Obviously, if it's urgent and you need to respond, then you do. A lot of messages are triggers. They're wanting to know how you are, how you're coping, how you're dealing with things. It validates them emotionally. Don't give them that. Put your phone or email away, move it somewhere, calm the chemicals down in your body that have been released, and then respond. Or write something out and then take the emotion out of it. Another thing you can do is trust your intuition. I mean, you very possibly saw the red flags during the relationship, but the abuser told you that your intuition was wrong, or you misunderstood a situation, or what had happened, or what was being said. They use gaslighting to undermine you. So whilst you've got this time away from them, start tuning into your intuition and get that working again. Start listening to it. Another thing you can do is step away from social media. They are slippery little suckers. And even if you've managed to block them, they'll find ways of getting through and sending you messages. Also stops you from posting emotional rants about what's happened and the injustice. Another thing is avoid the flying monkeys. Those mutual friends, they're enablers. And creating morning and evening routines can be really, really helpful. As I said, it's not uncommon for people coming out of this type of relationship to experience complex post-traumatic stress disorder, adrenal fatigue, and flashbacks. By creating a routine, you're creating a space that's safe for the mind and body. You might find that journaling is really helpful. Waking up and writing out your emotions, or going to bed and writing about your day, indicating to your body and your mind that you're ready for sleep, and you're, as I said, creating a safe space. You need to be gentle with yourself. There's a huge hole that's been left. And things like increasing your water intake and gentle exercise, like walking in nature particularly, really good and grounding. If they tried to hoover you and were successful, don't beat yourself up. They will say they're remorseful and they will promise you, or there'll be promises to change, and you will have found yourself in that safe environment that you were used to. We have a fear which is built in about rejection from the tribe. When you're ready, and this is finally it, you need to find a tribe that know how to support you through this. Set boundaries and stick to them. Take salt baths. Sit on your hands, sit on your phone, breathe through the pain, cry it out. I mean, that's really, really good one as well. Crying until there's nothing left. It does get easier, I promise. Find some grounding exercises, breathing exercises to help you through it. And as I said, on average, people return to abusive relationships up to 8 times. It's like an addiction, but people don't realise it actually is an addiction. At the beginning, I said, what if you're here for a reason? What if you're experiencing this for a particular reason? You have been given this opportunity to heal a deep wound. Please, if you can, grab at that opportunity with both hands. And yes, I know it will be painful to start with, but you can do this. If you need anything, put in the description box below what you need help with. I hope you found this useful and interesting. If If you'd like to find out more about working with me, I'll put the links to my website below. I'll also put the links to both my books, Finding Lily and the A to Z of Emotional Abuse. And I'll put the links to the 2 workbooks that I've got, Broken, Being Your Superpower, and a self-care workbook as well, which might help you with the healing. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and share if you know anyone who's going through something similar. Sending you loads and loads and loads of love.